So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Sprite Knight, and in these podcasts, I love talking all things movie and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Shrek. That's right, you heard me correctly, I am reviewing Shrek in today's podcast. So, without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Shrek was released in 2001. That's right, it was released 14 years ago this year. And when it was released, it changed the course of animation in film. It was groundbreaking in its story, in its storytelling, voice acting, and animation. And since then, there have been many more animated movies which have come out, many better animated movies which have come out. There have been better animated movies from DreamWorks. DreamWorks, the production studio, the animation studio behind Shrek. In my opinion, they've made better movies than Shrek since making Shrek. I think the first How to Train Your Dragon is a better movie than Shrek, but Shrek has found its place in pop culture, for better or for worse, but it has been ingrained in pop culture, and there's still so many people who go back to Shrek who consider it an animated classic. I can't tell you how many times I've turned on the television and Shrek is playing on like ITV1 or ITV2. It's always on TV, and people still refer to it now as this groundbreaking piece of animation, and not necessarily just for the animation, but also because of the story, because it was a subverted fairy tale that hadn't really been done before. It turned the idea of a fairy tale upside down, it turned on its head, whilst also being a fairy tale in itself. And I remember watching this film a long time ago, and I remember enjoying it, but not loving it. And the first time I saw it, I was at a much younger age than I'm at now, and I hadn't seen the first Shrek for quite a bit of time. I've seen Shrek 2 plenty of times, I've even seen Shrek the Third a lot of times, and though I hate to say it, because I'm not really a fan of the fourth film, I have seen Shrek Forever After, I think that's what the fourth film's called. I've seen that a lot of times as well, but I haven't really seen the first Shrek that many times. I think maybe I watched it twice back when I was a kid, but it never really, grabbed me the way so many other animated movies, like, say, Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit did. I remember from the youngest age falling in love with Wallace and Gromit, and that was all down to Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But I think I fell in love with Shrek from an early age because of Shrek 2. I don't think it was because of the first Shrek movie. So, the other day, I saw that it was on Netflix, and I decided to give it another go, to see if I liked it anymore, watching it now at an older age, or to see whether I disliked it at an older age, to see whether it worked for me anymore, or to see whether it didn't work for me at the age I'm at now. And yeah, I sat down to watch it. Did not really expecting much, because for some reason I got it into my head that the second film was so much better than the first film. So I sat down to watch the first film thinking, oh, it's going to be fine, it's going to be entertaining, but nothing special. And I finished the movie. I was sat downstairs and I finished the movie, and I couldn't believe how much fun I had watching it. Shrek still holds up. This film is an animated classic. It's just a classic movie, and it's a classic movie for a reason. It's still brilliant. It's so hilariously funny. I was laughing from scene to scene to scene to scene. It's so sharply written, subverting all the ideas of a fairy tale, but doing it so cleverly in a way that you almost don't realise until it's happened. The voice acting is still iconic. Mike Myers as Shrek is brilliant. Eddie Murphy as Donkey, I'm pretty sure he got an Oscar nomination. Best Supporting Oscar nomination for his voice acting as Donkey in the first Shrek movie, and you can tell why, because Eddie Murphy, I mean, God knows how much effort he must have put into voicing Donkey. You know, sometimes you see those videos of actors voicing certain characters, and Tom Hanks has spoken about this as well, you know, because Tom Hanks voices Woody in the Toy Story films. He talked about how much effort it actually takes for him to voice that character. I was about to say the voice actor. Woody's not an actor. Bigger the point of making. You know, Tom Hanks has spoken about in the past how much effort he puts into voicing Woody, because Woody's always in a rush, you know. He's always on the edge. And I just can't imagine how much effort and how exhausting it must be to voice Donkey for Eddie Murphy. I mean, Eddie Murphy is like that in many of his films. You know, the sort of persona he throws into Donkey is like that in many of his films. Like, you know, what's the famous police film that I just can't remember off the top of my head right now? Beverly Hills Cop. I can't believe I didn't remember that, because I love the first Beverly Hills Cop movie. I think it's fantastic. You know, it's the same sort of persona, but there's so much energy in that voice acting, and it just... it's something that just makes the characters so much more lovable. And Cameron Diaz is great as Fiona. Perfect voice casting. You rarely ever hear me say that about a film, but it's perfect voice casting. And John Lithgow is great as Lord Farquaad. Yeah, there's so much fantastic voice acting in the film. And not only is the film beautifully animated, like the cinematography, and it feels weird talking about cinematography in regards to a film like this, because it's an animated movie. Usually when you talk about cinematography, you're talking about how beautiful a shot from a camera looks. You know, so many times they're saying, oh, look how beautiful this scene was shot by, you know, Roger Deakins, who's a very famous cinematographer. But in the case of animated movies, I honestly don't think cinematography, and I don't know if cinematography is the right phrase, but, you know, I'm going to use that phrase for this review today. People don't talk about how important beautiful and memorable cinematography is in an animated movie. One of the reasons the How to Train Your Dragon movies, and in particular the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, works so well. It's one of the reasons Curse of the Were-Rabbit works so well. It's one of the reasons Pixar films are lauded, well, so many Pixar films, not all Pixar films, granted, there's been some stinkers over the years, but it's one of the reasons that so many Pixar films are lauded as these great cinematic masterpieces. Not only because of the storytelling, it's not only because of the story, it's not only because of the voice acting, but because of the way the animation looks, and because of the placement of certain things in shots. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many moments in the Shrek where it literally looks like a page or a drawing from a fairy tale novel. And I was watching and I was like, oh my god, this is held up so well. I thought the animation was going to look clunky. I mean, there are some parts where you can tell this is an animated movie from the early noughties, but at the same time, there's so much of the animation. I was like, that was just beautiful. Just the way this one shot looks. Yeah, this is a beautifully animated film, and not only is it so well written with a story which is insanely clever, and not only is it this great subverted fairy tale whilst being a great fairy tale in itself, you know, it's subverting all the ideas of a fairy tale. Usually in the fairy tale, you want the king to win. Usually you're rooting against the ogre, but in this film, you're rooting for the ogre. That's one of the reasons I think Shrek 2 is slightly cleverer than the first Shrek, because in Shrek 2, and I'll get into this when I review Shrek 2 in the next couple of days to weeks on this channel, it's one of the reasons I prefer Shrek 2 though, because in Shrek 2, the villains are the fairy godmother and Prince Charming, who are usually the heroes in all these fairy tale stories. But in this film, it's like, actually no, the hero is going to be an ogre. The hero of this film is going to be an ogre, and it's such a brave and bold choice. I can imagine the animators, I can imagine the writers being really happy with themselves that they came up with this idea of having the ogre as a hero who's going to kill the dragon and get the princess. But I can also imagine them going, what if this doesn't work? What if people don't like that? What if people don't gravitate to that at the same time? Like writing it down going, you know, actually, are people gonna like this ogre? But it's one of the reasons this film works so well, because it's unlike so many fairy tales. Unlike, yeah, It's unlike pretty much any other Disney or whatever fairy tale you can think of in its storytelling, because it's all about an ogre. But it's about an ogre that finds love. And the film shouldn't be this emotionally charming. It shouldn't be that emotionally engaging. It shouldn't feel that heartwarming. But it does. You get into the film and you're watching it and you want Fiona and Shrek to get together. Even though it's a story about an ogre finding love. And that's the pure genius of it. It's a fairy tale that subverts all the ideas of fairy tale on its head. You know, this film should not work for so many reasons, but it does. And the biggest reason it still works is because it's so wildly entertaining to watch. I was watching this the other day, and I thought it was going to feel like a bit of a chore to sit through. I don't know why. I must have been in a bad mood for some reason. I think I had a couple of things to do, a couple of chores to do in the house, a couple of things like, oh god, I have to do this by this day. So I was feeling a bit miffed, you know? And I sat down to watch Shrek and I was thinking, okay, is this going to feel like a chore? You know, sometimes you watch a cinematic classic and so many people call it, oh, it's a classic, it's a piece of amazing cinema, and you sit down to watch and you don't quite get it and you feel like you should love it because so many other people love it. And I don't know why, but I thought that was going to be the case with Shrek. But I sat down to watch it and I couldn't believe how entertaining it was. I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying myself. This film is still so enormously enjoyable to watch. And it's enormously enjoyable for all those reasons I've mentioned. It's incredibly funny. There were so many moments where I was bursting with laughter. I was dying of laughter. Like, the part I was laughing the most at was, I laughed throughout the film. I'm not just singling out this one scene as the only funny scene in the film. Not at all. But the funniest scene for me was probably when all these fairy tale characters all showing up at Shrek's swamp, and you have like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs trying to get into Shrek's swamp because they want to keep her safe. And then you have the big bad wolf in Shrek's bed, and they got Donkey there as well. You got all these fairy tale characters at Shrek's swamp, and I couldn't believe how much I was laughing. I've explained awfully there, but it was like, I was sat there and I was thinking to myself, this is still brilliant. This still holds up. Not only does the animation hold up, but also the writing. It's poking fun at Disney. It's making fun of all those classic Disney tropes where all these characters are usually, you know, the good guy. Where it's usually in a Disney fairy tale, it's Mr. Handsome gets with Mrs. Handsome. You know what I mean? Like, Mr. Handsome is usually Prince Charming. In the case of many fairy tales, you know, it's a Prince Charming-like figure. He goes and saves a princess who's in the castle, and they get together, and it's lovely. You know, just then I've explained the plot of many Disney fairy tales, and I'm not saying that makes them bad. You know, there's some Disney fairy tales which are great and have those similar sort of plots, like Cinderella. I think Cinderella's a great film. But at the same time, this movie jabs and makes fun of all of those Disney fairy tales, and actually shows that, you know what, the villains in these fairy tales, the villains in these Disney fairy tales, actually are characters as well. They have feelings, and that's another reason this film works so flipping well, because of the themes and the messages that are beautifully, I keep going back to that word beautiful, which I didn't expect to go back to so many times when I sat down to this review today, but the themes and the messages are so beautifully woven into the narrative of this film. I mean, the theme of don't judge a book by its cover is there throughout. The theme of that even the ugliest and nastiest of creatures are not necessarily ugly and nasty on the inside, and you know what? They deserve happiness too. And the themes that your happily ever after may not look like you think it's going to look like, and that's okay. And the themes that everybody needs companionship in their lives, and also the theme that love comes in all different shapes and sizes. I mean, there's many themes and messages like those that are like I said, beautifully woven into the film, and that's another reason it works so well, and that's another reason it's so emotionally engaging. And I sat there and I was watching the film. I just couldn't get over how good it was, and how much it had held up. Because this film came out 14 years ago this year. I don't know when it came out in 2001, but it came out 14 years ago this year. And yet, it's still brilliant. It's still so brilliant. There's some great cinematic references in there. There's a bit where Fiona fights all of Robin Hood's merry men. The action sequence is shot like the action stuff is shot like in The Matrix. You get the bit in the arena with Shrek, which is a callback to Gladiator. There's another one that I forgot off the top of my head right now, but I put down here. Jurassic Park. That was the other one. There was a big nod to Jurassic Park when you see the dragon, crash through the glass of the church and eat Lord Farquaad, and it's a big nod to the T-Rex scene from the first Jurassic Park movie, where the T-Rex eats the guy on the toilet. And as a big Jurassic Park fan, I love that reference. Yeah, there's so many great cinematic references in there, and making the dragon an actual character is brilliant. Having the dragon have this love story with Donkey shouldn't work, but it does so well. The film is, it's great. I didn't remember how good it was. And I think the reason it didn't work for me as a kid, or the reason it didn't work for me as much as it works for me now, is because, yes, it's a film primarily targeting this audience of kids. That's for sure. But I think in a similar way to The Simpsons, which I know is a TV show, but still, sit with me on the comparison here. In a similar way to The Simpsons, yeah, there's a lot of humour aimed at kids and aimed at a family audience, but there's also that extra layer of humour that is aimed at adults. That's one of the reasons that I think The Simpsons works so well for all different families, because you get the humour that's aimed at kids, humour that's aimed at, adolescents, and then you get the humour that's aimed at adults, which the kids might not understand, will probably go over the kids' heads, but the adults will chuckle at. And you get that with Shrek as well. I didn't actually quite realise how much you got it with Shrek until I was watching the film the other day. I was like, actually, there's quite a bit of adult humour here, which, like as I said before, as a kid, probably just went over my head, but actually is brilliant and makes it a proper family classic, and I do think it is. I do also think it's a bit of a shame that some memes have ruined this movie. I remember being at secondary school and people showing me Shrek memes, and it just felt like the films are being memed to death, and I didn't really like that. And luckily I didn't really follow many Shrek memes, so the film wasn't ruined for me by memes, but I do feel it has been slightly tainted by memes. But the fact is, the film is incredibly clever in its story, in its storytelling, in its characters, and in its writing, and it's still incredibly funny to watch. And it's also got a great soundtrack in there, which I hadn't mentioned yet, with many, many great songs. I mean, I know everyone likes to play All Star by Smash Mouth as a sort of jokey song now, but it's used well in the film, in my opinion, and it's beautifully animated, and everything about the film just works, I could go on and on about how much the film works, but I have gone on and on already. So I'm just going to say this one last thing. It may not be the best animated movie of all time. In fact, I might say I prefer Shrek 2. And I'll talk about that in more detail when I review Shrek 2 in the forthcoming days to weeks on this channel. So it may not be one of the best animated movies of all time. But, and you know what, it may be the top 5 best animated movies of all time. And it may even be DreamWorks' best animated movie. Like I said at the start of this review, I think I prefer the first How to Train Your Dragon over this. And Curse of the Were-Rabbit is DreamWorks as well, so I prefer Curse of the Were-Rabbit for definite over this. I think Curse of the Were-Rabbit is one of the best animated movies of all time, period. However, I do think this is an incredibly important animated movie, because I think it broke down the barriers of what animated movies could be like, how they could subvert on the classic tales for years to come. I think animation changed a lot because of Shrek. And I think you can see that in so many animated movies and Disney animated movies at that since the release of Shrek in 2001. And I would say that Shrek is probably in the top 10, and if not top 10, then definitely top 15 animated movies of all time. It is still so good, and yes, it holds up. It definitely holds up. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Shrek, I'm going to say it's a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I do think there's parts which can be improved on and are improved on in Shrek 2, in my opinion. I'm not going to go into this issues that I have with this movie because I want to focus on the positive. And I do think this film works just wonders. And, you know, I won't be the first person to say this. I'm definitely not the first person to say this, actually. And I won't be the last person to say this. But it's a subverted fairy tale that still manages to be a great fairy tale story and hits you in the feels, makes you laugh out loud, and provides you with a whale of a time. It's only 90 minutes, and oh god, I love when a film's 90 minutes, and it accomplishes so much, and this film did exactly that. Yeah. I love Shrek. Love it. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more, in today's podcast, Shrek is a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Shrek, then please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And look forward to my view of Shrek 2 coming soon on this channel. But until then guys, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this video. And look forward to many more videos and many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I already said, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And yeah, we got there in the end. Boy, I do ramble on, don't I? I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye!